Welcome to the Getting Real with Hilary show, where ordinary heroes tell extraordinary stories during unique and never been heard before conversations with your host, Hilary Arno Burns. Hilary's unique listening and way of asking questions results in conversations that aren't usually talked about, so you can create the life that you really want but are afraid you can't really have. We are demonstrating the greatness in the human spirit and creating a world where we all reclaim our birthright of joy, happiness, purpose, and passion. Now, here's your host, Hilary Arno Burns. Welcome to the Getting Real with Hilary show, where today we are going to have some real talk, just like my newly published book is about. And I can't wait to introduce my guest. So I'm just going to do it. Dr. Balin A. Durr, MD. We met about a year ago. Well, I'm already starting to cry. In a master broadcasting course. And we have come from a podcast where you just hear us to a TV show, to a video show, to now live broadcasting. So Dr. Durr and I have been on the same path. We kind of took it at our own different speeds. We have arrived here together. I was a guest on her show last week, and today I am honored to have Dr. Balin A. Durr on my show. Dr. Durr is a dynamic, board-certified child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist with a fresh, transformative approach to improving the lives of children and families through better brain health and mind-body wellness. Her unique approach to and use of the healing intersection of traditional and alternative medicine and spiritual well-being provide clarity, understanding, and a way forward for your mind-body healing. And today we have a bunch of topics, as you know, or maybe you don't. On the Getting Real with Hilary show, we cover things that people don't always talk about, where people get their greatness and inspire others with their ability to overcome obstacles and create lives that they love. So welcome, Dr. Balin A. Durr.
Well, hello there. Hilary, how you doing?
Great to see you again.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I call it bullpen, when we were in the bullpen discussing what we were going to talk about today, I learned some challenges, and that, can I call you Balin, or do you want me to call you Dr. Durr? Dr. Durr. That Dr. Durr.
Or Dr. Balin, Dr. Durr, or Dr. Balin. Either one of those is fine.
Dr. Balin, or we'll just call her Bad for Dr. Balin A. Durr. So anyway, I wanted her to start at the beginning. What she told me was that being Black or an African-American, however you want to phrase it, in America was constantly about overcoming. And she had some challenges growing up that she has overcome and that she's not, that she's willing to talk about. So which one would you like to start with? Your physical abuse, or do you want to just give us a background where you were born, your brothers and sisters, stuff like that?
So first of all, of course, I want to say, thank you for having me on the show. It's good to share the platform with my sister broadcaster, and I just love what you do and what your show is about. And let me say up front why that is. The reason being is because really keeping it, or I should say, getting real is really about being a truth teller. And there is a lot of, I think, influence and pressure, even coercion, threats to be a part of the herd, to not be your, as I like to say, your unique, wonderful self. Other people say your authentic self. So I think it takes courage, and it takes will, and it takes tenacity and in order to be a truth teller. That- So, so, um, and I,
So I'm looking forward to your talking about your story.
well, so here's the thing about that. I think, so here's what I think. What I think is that, and you already introduced this. So number one, because my framework is also that I'm a spiritual being that inhabits this physical body, that to me what matters most is identity. And so that is who I am, that spiritual being that's in this vehicle, like a car, like a driver of a car, that um that's who I am, and not my traumas, not my experiences, not my doings, or what was done to me. So, so certainly want to share more of who I am other than just my traumas. But the other part too is because my education, I started off as a sociologist. My bachelor's degree is in sociology, and I have a minor in African American studies. I was a sociologist long before I ever became a psychiatrist. And so my lens, I think, is kind of somewhat unique given that, along with my own experiences. So I said all that to say, and kind of even in the big context, um, I think that anyone that is considered to be quote unquote disadvantaged or a minority, which is a mischaracterization, uh, um, is in many ways the conscience of this country. Mhm. Because how do you treat those who other people would consider lesser than, or in a smaller minority, or have a smaller voice because of numbers? And it's interesting because how I grew up is very much a part of the influence to how I came to into that, those questions, that curiosity, the wanting to know, the wanting to understand. So I grew up on the south side of Chicago in Inglewood, and and for those who may not be familiar, Inglewood is definitely a really tough neighborhood, and I was raised by a single mom who, my parents divorced when I was, 3. And my mom was really tough. Number one, she grew up with like 6 boy cousins and uncles. But she was also, and because of that, we came up during a different time, both her and me, where sometimes you had to do what I call throw some hands, meaning when folks come, she would always say, don't start a fight, but you need to finish one. Right. And so, basically, growing up, Inglewood is the hood. Her nickname was Peaches. And anybody that knows what that means, Peaches, yeah.
What does it mean?
Uh, it's a nickname I think is indicative of the, I think, both the substance, I think also in the strength, but also the, I do think also some of the sweetness, but also again, the strength and the swag, frankly, of being a strong African-American woman. And also the beauty, frankly. So
it's not the fruit. We're not talking about a peach, like a nectarine / that kind of peach.
I mean, it's the references to that, and actually, my mom's family is actually from Georgia, so we got the Georgia.
Oh, there you go.
The Georgia peaches.
All right, good. That makes sense.
And they're, they call women, Georgia peaches, right? It's not just the fruit; it's also, that's a term that they use to refer to women, at least in the African American community. So,
wow.
yeah. So So what does that mean? And I mean, like, we lived in
Well, the hands you were talking about laying.
right. I was talking about throwing hands because we lived in a community where
Is that like
gang members, yeah, but throwing hands where you had to fight sometimes. And my mom was very much about, if you hurt me, I'm gonna hurt you. So that's what, yeah. She did not play. And so where the gifts that came from my mom were about, again, about strength, about courage and bravery and tenacity. And also and she's very intelligent, very articulate, but a warrior, but has a warrior's heart. And and
wait, a
and
warrior or a warrior?
I said war as in warrior.
Warrior. Okay. I didn't. At first, I thought you said worry, like warrior. Okay,
No,
got
warrior.
it. Wow.
Yeah, a warrior's heart. And she had a standard of excellence when it came to both academics, because I also have a sister, academically, but also in terms of character. Again, I grew up at a time where it was also about the community. It wasn't just about the individual parent. It was about, again, it was about the village. There were all the other families. We moved out of there and moved to the suburbs, but it was still, it was Miss this and Mr. that, and folks that that not all they saw you too. So you better be careful. Make sure you weren't doing something you weren't supposed to be doing, because that meant your parents were gonna get a phone call.
Mm.
So, but the other part of her, and let me say this too, it was also, again, because of her standard of excellence. My mom had some college, but didn't finish her degree. But because of her standard of excellence, my sister and I both went on and got bachelor's degrees. Of course, I went on to medical school and got an MD. My sister subsequently got a master's degree and was also retired kind of recently, actually, as she was the vice president of corporate audits for Boeing. So, right. And after my sister and I both got our undergraduate degree, my mom went back, finished up her bachelor's, and got her master's degree. So yes,
Nice.
that's who we're talking about. In terms of as you like to say, my mom is fierce.
Mm.
She's amazing. She really is. A magnificent standard of African American womanness,
Yeah.
and beauty, intellect, and fierce, and very stylish. Tell me, where do you think where I get this from?
Nice.
So, but also then there is a legacy in our family and, frankly, in our community of physical abuse. And we're and so there was a lot of work that my mom and I had to do in terms of conversations over many years about this, because it was really hard for her to hear. And one of the things that came out in the conversations, and I'm just want you to know, it wasn't easy, because the first time I brought this up with her, she actually kind of was like basically threatening to disown me if I brought it up again. It was not, I don't want people to think it was an easy conversation. I don't want people to think that because it was anything but.
So but just when you say physical abuse, she hit you, hurt you, like what kind of things was she doing?
We would get beatings with an extension cord, because that's what I call that.
Wow.
Right. And the
So when you brought it up, was she not aware of it? Did she just what was her response?
right, and so here's what I was going to say about that. So that's also where I'm going with this is really a legacy of, and I want people to have this context and this understanding. It's a legacy of slavery. She didn't even realize, over the course of the years of us having the conversation and finally getting to this place where she could talk about it. And it was because it was normal in her household. It was normal in her community. And so when something is normalized for you, you don't see that it's a problem. You don't know that it's a problem because it's happening at your house, but it's happening at the other houses around you in your community. And the thing that I think that people may not understand, because in no way am I making it right, okay? So number one, she's doing what was done to her.
Right.
Right. So she's been traumatized and beaten. And so have the other kids that are around her age, that she's growing up with. That's how they grew up and that's how their parents grew up. And so and so again, so she's dealing with her own traumas too that she doesn't even necessarily know or recognize, and doesn't know that this is not that it is abuse, frankly.
Right.
Again, I say this. See this when I say it's. When I say it's a carryover from. So I say it's a carryover from slavery, because the other thing that people may not understand or know is that as someone who's African American in this country, the we're not really given much grace. Meaning that if we're perceived as doing something wrong or harmful, the retribution is swift and severe. To give you an example, even in today's times, how is it that someone who, the alleged perpetrator of a mass shooting who's white can come out alive compared to someone who's African American who doesn't have a gun, who therefore is not necessarily threatening that way, but the perception by law enforcement is that they're a threat, and therefore they end up killed, even if they have no weapon, even if they're running, so you see what I'm saying? The standard is entirely different. So part of why African American parents did that is because they're trying to get you to keep you from getting killed. Not okay. Not okay to do it that way. I want to be clear. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm explaining the reasons why. Because especially when you operate from a place of living in a society that sees you as inferior, and that's always a competitor that's coming at you to keep you from getting access to resources, and or wants to use you as a resource, i.e. your labor, then there are all these things that are done to keep you in place, including physical violence, right? The rest of America is, is experiencing domestic terrorism in a way that they never have, but the way we as African Americans have experienced since before we were brought here. So it's a perpetuation and a persistence of that. And parents who are trying to survive and live every day, who don't necessarily have much bandwidth to do a whole lot of explaining and a whole lot of talking, especially if they've been explaining and talking to you before and you're not responding, and then they can end up going to physical violence to get you to stop because you're not hearing me. And I don't want you harmed. I want you arrested. I don't want you dead. So again, not okay, but just to kind of give you a historical context and understand where that legacy comes from.
So good for you for interrupting that cycle and for having the courage to discuss it with your mother. You could have just perpetuated it. That was normal. Obviously you didn't. So that what had you you will? I mean, I know you have a background in psychiatry and all that, but what made you willing to go to her and say, "Hey, we need to talk about this"? What?
Oh,
Like, what?
because I'm a big bad, and then the reason that's what I say that.
You're a
when,
big bad.
when I say that, because I'm a truth teller.
Okay.
I'm a truth teller, and I say, and I told you that, before, one of my friends who was in ministry, he would call me I should call it the ishter, shit stir,
Oh,
and it's because that in that's in terms of saying ish.
yeah.
That's and so so number one, you have to have courage to tell the truth, um, both to yourself and, so I had to have courage to tell the truth, both to myself and to other people. And because, there can be acceptance, but it can also be costly to tell the truth,
Yes.
right? This is, what price am I going to have to pay? What am I going to have to sacrifice in
Right.
order to tell the truth, in order to live the truth, right? And frankly, my childhood I found it kind of confusing, because, again, on the one hand, my mom was this kind, loving person.
Mhm.
Like I said, she really is an amazing soul. She really is. On the one hand, she's this kind, loving person, but on the other hand, she's, very, and she and but then the enforcer. That's, like what I
Mm.
call it, right? She also had this wonderful, which I taken on from her, of she would say, like, on like a Saturday, let's go rambling, and so we just, like, driving and go and exploring and whatever. And so that, is very much, I think, a part of too why I'm curious and like to explore, like to
Mm.
know, to understand. And but because I found my childhood confusing, frankly, um, it, that had a lot to do with why I became a child psychiatrist. Frankly, my mother had a lot to do with why I became a child psychiatrist, in the sense that she had some insights and some understandings about our family patterns, in terms of who the women picked as mates. And so I think that, her conversations with me about that as I was growing up, and her conversations about, experiences with, in terms of her dad. And so me trying to get that understand, let me say this. It's what led me to become a child psychiatrist, but I didn't intend to become a psychiatrist at all. The interesting thing was also, my mom was um, very open and very informative, and very, in terms about being accepting of your own body. And this is, sex and reproduction is just a normal part of the human body's functioning. And so you need to know what it is, and you need to understand, and you need to be responsible with it. And so, in her talking to me about that, I was just like kind of awestruck about, the beauty and wonder, again, of the development of a human life and bringing that life into the world. So initially, my decision to become, a physician, I was in what we call junior high school, was because I wanted to be an OB-GYN. And
Well,
yes, yes, actually,
wow.
I actually wanted to become an OB-GYN. And, when I was in medical school and did the rotation, I loved OB, but I didn't like gynae, in the sense of I didn't like being a surgeon.
Oh.
I didn't like being a surgeon. Didn't like the, being on call every fourth night.
Mm.
So I like to have time to just sit and talk to people, right?
Yeah.
Talk, let's get chat, let's get to know, let me get to know who you are. And, so, but my trusted, I had faith and trusted. I was like, okay, God, I don't know what you got for me next, because I don't know where to go from here. And I'm not a worrier, so I was just like, it'll show up. I just knew that if internal medicine was all there was to medicine, I would have quit medical school. So, uh, no, all these adults with these 99 problems and 99 medications, and just not really seeming to get well, that's not what I want to do.
Yeah.
So psychiatry is one of the required rotations. Uh, and so when I did the rotation, and also I could see the residents, right? I could see the residents and how they looked and how the energy coming from them. And it was far more relaxed, right? And far more relaxed and at ease. Again, I knew I had got a chance to talk to people. I was like, this. So I'm like, this is my flow right here in terms of being a psychiatrist. This is my flow. And,
Right.
and so I think to me, what that was a demonstration of again is I didn't know anything about psychiatry. So I can't make a decision. I can't choose what I don't know anything about. But what I can do is choose what I do know. And guess what? If I just do that to the best of my ability, it's going to take me where I need to go.
Interesting. Right. One thing that's niggling in my head, when you said you were confused,
Yes.
and that's why you chose it, was it because your mother was kind and loving and an enforcer? Is that what you were confused about? Or was there something else that caused the confusion?
That was a part of it, but also the other part of it was the fact that here's the way I say it. I think everybody has their own brilliance and what they are uniquely gifted
Mm-hmm.
and designed and purpose for. And while I knew I was smart, it's really taken me until the last few years of one of my friends a few years ago said to me, he's like, do you realize that medicine is like one of the most difficult career paths there is in this country? And I was like, really? No, actually, I hadn't really thought about that. Uh,
I just did it. I didn't think about that. Yeah.
correct, correct. And so the other part of that, and here's the other part too, because I still want to go back to the childhood stuff, but I want to just say this. Not only that, but I was not only in terms of, academically gifted, but also athletically gifted. I was also a college athlete. And in high school, I went to state. Was preference. I was a thrower, shot put and discus thrower. And right. And the interesting thing from that was I actually started off as a sprinter, and I was a really good sprinter. But I'm also was kind of somewhat tomboyish. I'm out playing football with the boys, put a hit on one of the boys, and jacked up my knee. Yes. But the thing was, here's the other two, the beauty and the lesson in this, because I was more focused on the academics and not the athletics and not being a sprinter. For me, and we went to see orthopedic surgeon, and he said, basically go somewhere, sit down, don't play sports anymore. And I was like, not going to happen. I didn't say that out loud, but I'm like, not going to happen. But because I wasn't attached to being a sprinter, I was like, and had also been a gymnast. I said, let me figure out what else I can do. Right. And then that led me, my knee is damaged. Right. My knee is damaged. I never had surgery, but I was damaged to the point where I couldn't run. And so I switched over to throwing. Like I said, went conference, went to state, and actually in college, went to Division III nationals.
Wow.
Yes. So not only that, and then also, I think what my friend was alluding to when he was talking about, do you know how difficult medicine was?
Yeah.
Then I had the nerve to be a single parent with a daughter who's 11 months old when I started medical school.
Wow.
Yes. So,
wow. All right. So
I just want to, because the reason I laid all of that out, because also there's the confusion. Why it's part of the confusion? Because I have really no understanding of my greatness. I'm just doing what I know how to do to the best of my ability, even in terms of, grammar school and high school. And again, this is just only some recent realizations as I've been looking back. When I was in third grade, myself and two of the boys got pulled out of class once a week in order to go to teachers college.
Oh.
And then we end up moving during the school year after the first semester. And so I didn't finish that. But again, I'm just doing what I'm doing. So I have really no understanding or appreciation of, again, how significant that is in terms of an indicator of, frankly, of my intellect. And I always felt like I kind of had one foot in and one foot out as it related to, my peers, and it related to the kids that I was growing up with. I love people. So, I played with them. I was, it was nice and kind. We did the things that, we do during the summers and playing the dozens and some other things and playing softball and whatever else we were playing out on the, as we called it, we called it the circle, because we didn't know anything about a cul-de-sac.
Oh, we called it a dead end.
Okay.
But we were on a dead end. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, and then continuing when I get into high school, now I'm on the advanced math track, and I started off, there was one other African-American female, but she and her family, they moved at the end of freshman year. So it's just me the remaining 3 years. I'm the only African-American in this advanced math track, which culminates in taking calculus and the AP exam in the senior year. But again, I have no understanding of that. And I think the reason why I think that's so important is, again, it's been these last few years as friends of mine or other people, like somebody said, "You're a rock star." I was like, "Who?" Oh. And I say that because, number one, I think identity is so important, and many of us don't know who we are. We are just doing what we know how to do to the best of our ability, and not necessarily always realizing that we're egos, sometimes flocking with sometimes flocking with turkeys, and judged as being a problem because we're not a turkey. And or a chicken or a dove or what else. And I certainly see that in people who are high achievers. They have what I call, they got the goods, right? They've got the education. They've attended top 10, top 20 schools of the country. They they have the certifications, they have the tools, the skills, the knowledge, but because they compare themselves to other people that are their peers, they find themselves inadequate because they're not like them. So the confusion was my sense of kind of when I say one foot in, one foot out, and kind of belonging but not quite belonging, and that got perpetuated when I went to Emory undergraduate, because
so save that thought, because we're going to take we're past halftime. We got only 15 minutes left. So I want to just do our halftime show with our sponsor, and then we'll come back and talk about what you're up to now. How's that?
Okay.
Right. Thank you.
Has social-emotional learning become just one more thing on your teachers' plates? Do teachers and students both find it boring and ineffective? Then bring Kikori to your school. Kikori transforms classrooms through experiential SEL activities that help students play, reflect, connect, and grow. Even better, students say it's more fun than recess. Schedule a no-obligation conversation at kikoriapp.com/bringkikori. KIKORI.
Thank you again to our sponsor, Kikori. That's my daughter's voice. That was her voice in the commercial. And also, if you're feeling stuck or like you're not being real or having real talk, that's what we can solve at realtalkwithhilary.com. Go there, check out the book, take the Real Talk quiz, and schedule a call with me, and we can get you unstuck. So welcome back, Dr. Balin A. Durr. So we've been covering a lot about you growing up with your mom, a little confusion, fitting in, comparison. Obviously, you are brilliant and you have excelled and you are making a huge mark on the world with your spirituality and your framework and what you do. Just bringing the medicine and the spirituality together. So can we talk? I know that we could talk about a zillion things, but I want people to know like what you're to now, what your vision is. If you want to talk about it, what are you bringing to, you have your own show and what's your purpose in what you're doing? Because we each have our own show. That was what we were doing with our wonderful mentor, Kendi Foster. And I just want to hear it from your voice. Like what is that passion of yours that you want to impart to the world?
So, earlier, of course, I mentioned that if I do what I know how to do, it takes me to the next step, and it'll get eventually into the next step, and it'll eventually get me to where it is that, that my, that my soul, that my beautiful soul needs to go. Is what it's here to do. And actually, at the right before the break, I was actually saying that, attending Emory, I was one of 30 African American students, and there were only 30
Out of how many?
850.
850. So there were 30 African Americans. You were one of them out of 850. So that's small percentage, okay?
Tiny. And the college was about 3,200 or so. Then there was the university there was 8,000. And again, there's this, to be honest with you, severe sense of isolation and separation, and trying to figure out how to do this in terms of college on this level. Again, not really understanding my own gifts and talents and my own brilliance. And so by the time I finished college, I was really burnt out. Even though I knew I wanted to go to medical school, I didn't have it in me. And I'm not even sure how this happened, but someone that I knew, Dr. Guy Seymour, introduced me to this coursework called LifeSpring. And what's so interesting is, and one of the classes, because I did basic, advanced, leadership and mastery, that what's so interesting is the fact that one of the trainers, I'm sitting in the audience, and one of the trainers, she's an African American female, and she's a powerful sister, man. I'm sitting there going, I want to do that, and then I said, no. Stay focused, stay on the path. We're going to medical school. And little did I know that really I thought becoming a psychiatrist was the destination, but really becoming a psychiatrist was training and preparation to do that work I call it in terms of that being a trainer, and in terms of helping people demonstrate their greatest infinite potential. So what I do in terms of discovering my own journey and soul's path, because again, at times, I was just with people. I've had bouts of depression since probably high school, definitely in residency. I was actually the first year of residency. I was actually in a combined program doing pediatrics. And there'd be times I just break out and crying on the unit because I was just miserable. And I said, let me switch and do psychiatry. And at one point, when I switched to the psychiatry program at the University of Florida, my attending, he said, and I'm talking, I was like, just really don't enjoy my work. He's like, Balin, are you depressed? And I was like, I had to really give some thought, because even when I was listening to myself, it sounded that way. And so the reality is that what I know to be true, and I think in terms of what I know as a child psychiatrist, that in my framework, the souls that we are, the higher self that we are, we come here whole, complete, and perfect. But I call it the layers of living takes over that identity that's crucial. And when identity is off, it's like the foundation of the building, then the building is off. And so my work here is to help people remove those layers so that the unique, wonderful, beauty, creative being that they are already doesn't need to be fixed, doesn't need to be healed. None of that needs to happen to the being that you are, but the trauma and the life experiences that takes over that truth, your true self, healing that and excavating that, removing that, so that again, you can demonstrate your infinite potential. The part that I try to help people understand is, like I said, that spiritual being is in this body. Well, what does that mean? That means that we have a brain, we have a body, we have thoughts, we have feelings. But the infinite potential that we are, that inhabits this body, has to flow through the gateway of a human brain in order to demonstrate that great infinite potential. The potential is infinite. It remains what it is. But what is my demonstration of it? Well, that has to come through both the organic brain itself, but also the thoughts I think. So I've developed this term in terms of mental wealth, defined as brain health plus transformative thinking. And I offer practical tools and solutions from the intersection of mind-body medicine, science, and spiritual well-being to awaken and empower you to live out your infinite potential, to live life in the sweet spot.
And that's the name of Dr. Balin's show, Living in the Sweet Spot. Yeah.
Dr. Durr's Living in the Sweet Spot.
Yeah.
And it's been quite a journey. It's been quite a journey. And I was just going to say, part of that began with my book,
Heaven Abounds on You. Yeah, we could say it. We can sing it.
Joy. And so it's, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I know you've had conversations with God. I did want to, there's so many things we could talk about, but I do want to, I want you to talk about everything. So I don't even know where to go because we got 6 minutes left. But when you first started having conversations with God, and that's what Dr. Durr has put in her book, like, did you know it was God? Were you like, who are you? Did you think it was your brain? Like, how did you know it was God?
Oh, I did. So I did know. And again, here's the wonderfulness when we, in our awareness, are in tune and connected to the allness of life, right? Because in my framework, God, higher self, energy, intelligence, whatever you want to call it, is everything comes from that. So everything at its core is that, whether you want to call it energy, whether you want to call it life force, it is that. And so what happened was I had many years ago had read Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. And of course, he had written those conversations down. So in having spiritual conversations with a couple of friends of mine, like, when is your book coming out? I'm like, and I would be sitting up under the hair dryer, I mean, my hair done under the dryer, and I'd start contemplating, and stuff would start coming to me, right? And then what happened was, basically started having to start to clock in at work, and I was like, you know what? Tap on the shoulder, you better get moving. And but the problem was I was so frightened because I don't have the education, I didn't go to seminary, I don't have the training, I don't have a mentor, all this I don't have. And but I'm feeling compelled to start the writing. And in the process of writing, what happened was God joined me for conversations. And because of having read Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh, I immediately started writing them down. And also the other thing too is the reason how I started writing was because I said, I may not know how to do this, because even in the publishing the book and royalties of whatever, I may not know how to do this, but my spirit knows how to do this. And by saying yes to my spirit, then the content started flowing like 2 weeks later. So and then in the process of writing, God starts to join me for conversations. I start writing them down. And really what the conversations about are how I'm an expression of God. He's like, you're me, I'm you, you're mine, I'm yours. You think that you have something to give up. There's nothing to give up. You have no idea, right? There's so much waiting for you here with me, through me. You call it the land of milk and honey. I call it forever. Yes, that's right, forever. I'm like, oh my God, God is poetic.
Wow.
And
it really wasn't your words. It was really coming through you, right?
The conversations with God, that's God having the conversation with me, his words and my words. And then actually there's chapter 22, which was where God and I became one in the sense of, it's called Full Bloom. I couldn't have written that by myself then nor now. And I was writing the expansion, what I thought was the expansion of another chapter. And I said, God, please help. I said, my mind is so jumbled, cluttered. Please help. And I wrote the first sentence, and then again, here comes the rest of it. And it wasn't like, it was really like we were one.
Together, yeah.
Right. And, in that oneness, what I discovered, of course, that's really what communion is. It's union, it's oneness. But it's in knowing that I'm an expression of the Creator, right? We all are, the water, the air, all of it is. So we're all the one appearing in our own individual form. So everything is the one in an infinite number of physical forms. But I also, in that oneness, in those moments, understood that I know what God knows. If I wanted to know where a star was, all I had to do is look at it, would be right there, right? So it's really about embracing my true identity, the truth of who I am, trusting that, getting out as you made the reference to, the electrical fence of my fears that try to keep my body safe. But if my physical safety is what's important to me, if it's the priority, then my purpose will suffer. So it's the getting my thoughts and my fears and my mind and my brain as healthy as possible, and so that they serve who I am as this beautiful soul here, its own unique design and purpose, to do it in a way that only I can. So we need not to fear, we need not to be afraid. We just need to be willing to live our truth, the truth of our being, walk our path, irrespective of other people understand us or not. right? We need to be truth tellers to ourselves, and before we can be truth tellers and demonstrate that to anyone else.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. What a powerful interview. Well, thank you. This is the infinite potential. And I love the way you say you don't know, but you know enough to go to the next step. And obviously, you've been following your next steps, and look at what you're doing for the world and what you're making available and the message from God and your book. I mean, it's just incredible. So I commend you. You know, I don't know if anybody else listening, you know, has suffered some of the same situations as you, but obviously you know, overcame them and they made you stronger, and you've taken all that past and used it for what you're bringing to the world. So thank you for that. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for being on the show. And is there anything you'd want to say in closing?
Yeah. So obviously, if anyone wants to reach me, I'm on social media at Balin A, Durr, MD. My website, balinadurrmd.com. Please feel free to reach out to me. Really, what I'm doing at this point is trusting my God self, trusting the wonderful being that I am, because as you can see, I mean, and it's the preparation to become what I'm, you know, a speaker, I'm an author, I'm a poet. So we are able to demonstrate our wonderfulness in so many ways, so many creative ways, right? And everybody that I know has suffered some kind of hurt or trauma, and you can heal from that, and you can have the greatest demonstrations of your infinite potential and live the life that you love, that you long for. Free yourself from the bonds of fear and conformity and mediocrity. If you will have the trust and the courage in your divine self to do what it calls you to do.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. If you're feeling stuck in any way, you can reach your infinite potential with Dr. Balin A. Durr at her website, as she said, or if you're feeling stuck, go to realtalkwithhilary.com, do your little quiz, and set up a call with me as well. So thank you. Thank you, Dr. Balin. And this has been the Getting Real with Hilary show.
Yes. Be truth tellers to people, and know that know that I tell people, just if somebody breaks your leg, they're responsible for breaking it, but because it's your leg, you're responsible for healing it. So, you know, do what you need to do to get your healing. Be a truth teller for yourself and for other people, demonstrating your greatest infinite potential.
Thank you.